guys, Cameron with CBM Reviews here, and we're here to talk about Captain Marvel. This is going to be my spoiler review where I talk more about plot things that I didn't talk about in my non-spoiler review. So if you haven't seen it and you don't want to be spoiled, click right up there. However, if you have watched it and you want to get a little bit more as far as my opinion on things, or if you haven't watched it and you were just a little curious, stay tuned. Before I start, I want to give a huge thanks to all of my subscribers. Thank you very much for being along with me on this journey. We're almost at 500 subs, and when I hit that 500 mark, I'm going to do something very special for one of you. I'm going to randomly select one of you to receive quite a few things. So if you haven't subscribed before, go ahead and subscribe now. And if you want to know as soon as I post something, hit that notification bell. You'll know as soon as I post a video. So I want to go over the story pretty quickly, the things about the story that I didn't talk about in my non-spoiler review. First off, Carol Danvers is called Fears when she's taken by the Kree to their home planet, and she's trained and she's told that the Skrull are all the enemies, which is a lie. They are trying to exterminate the Skrull because the Skrulls will not conform to the Kree way of lifestyle. And if you know anything about the Kree, especially the extremists from Guardians of the Galaxy, they don't like to play nice. They like to destroy entire civilizations that refuse to conform. Ronan the Accuser is in this movie, and he is all about destruction on the maximum level. But getting back to our main story, Carol Danvers, or Veers as she's called, on the Kree home planet, is out on a mission to rescue somebody who has some intel, and the Skrulls might just get him, and then if the Skrulls get their hands on him, the intel is all but lost. Turns out it's a Skrull infiltrating, and they are trying to make their way back to Earth to find Dr. Wendy Lawson, because she is the key for the Skrulls finding something precious. And at first the Kree think that it's a light-speed engine. It turns out to be something completely different. In any case, they make their way to Earth, and Veers is first introduced to Nicholas J. Fury. And this is the point in the movie where the buddy cop starts to go. There's a little bit of mix of spy tactics, investigative, not necessarily journalism, but there's some investigative portions of it, and finding out that things may not be what they seem. They go to this place called Project Pegasus. There's a couple of fights, a little bit of a chase scene, and then they find one of Carol Danvers' old friends back when she had a life on Earth. They go to Louisiana, and they find Maria Rambo, who is kind of like her go-to sister girl back when she was in the Air Force, and she's shocked. She's like, "Oh my gosh, Carol, I thought you died." Well, of course, everybody thought that she died. There was a whole giant cover-up because Pegasus is supposed to be this straight-up shadow pocket thing nobody's supposed to know about. In any case, they find out the truth from Talos, who is the Skrull that was impersonating not only the shadow Kree agent, but the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. And it turns out the Skrulls aren't trying to kill entire civilizations. They're just trying to live in peace away from Kree oppression. And he's looking for something, and it turns out that something is just his family. They're just trying to live peaceful. And the energy signature, ta-da, is the Tesseract. This is where the Tesseract is kind of reintroduced into the MCU, and it shows how S.H.I.E.L.D. got their hands on it, even though the last time that we saw it from a chronological standpoint in this story was at the bottom of the ocean when Howard Stark was looking for Captain America. So we found out that the Tesseract is the energy source that not only Dr. Wendy Lawson was using, but it's also what gave Carol Danvers her powers. This is why she's considered the strongest Avenger, because she's literally powered by an Infinity Stone. We also find out that Dr. Wendy Lawson wasn't a human at all, but she was actually Kree. She found out the story or rather the Kree's dirty little secret that the Skrull are not these invasive and horrible people, but they're actually peaceful and they just want to live. They just want to live out their days without harming anybody. And her name was Mar-Vell. Long story short, the Kree force, led by Yon-Raag, find Veers, or Carol at this point. I'm not going to call her Veers anymore. They find Carol, they stop her, and they're about to take care of the Skrull scum, but something happens. They get out. Carol takes off the dampening chip, and now she is like this super powered Amazo chick. I mean, is that a bad way to describe it? No, that's what super bad Amazo chick. That's Captain Marvel. And she takes out all the Kree, and she finds the Skrull someplace safe to live, and Nick Fury loses an eye. I'm going to talk about that later. And that's pretty much the story of Captain Marvel, minus a lot of, small plot points, that sort of thing. As I said, I enjoyed this movie. I didn't love this movie. There are some people that are talking about how much they love this movie. I really liked it. On the level that I like Doctor Strange. I really enjoyed Doctor Strange. So this is not me saying that it's a bad movie. I just feel like it's kind of middle of the pack as far as MCU movies go. It's not a bad thing. It's just how I feel about it. And everybody's entitled to feel however they feel about it. This is a piece of art, and art is subjective. It doesn't have to be the same thing to everybody else. Something that is going to hit me a certain way is going to hit, say, Kevin Smith a completely different way. And I mentioned Kevin Smith because, as everybody knows, Stan Lee passed last year, and Stan Lee looked at Kevin like Kevin was his own son. So for the opening role, instead of all the heroes with the Marvel logo, it's all of Stan Lee's cameos. That's got to hit him hard. And then Stan Lee's cameo in this movie was Stan rehearsing his lines for Mallrats. And that was kind of like the cameo making a full circle. So for Kevin, this movie is something truly special to him. And nobody can take that away. It's absolutely true. For him, this is probably number one. And that's great. It's not number one for me. That's fine too. But I think that as far as the story goes, like I said, a second viewing, I watched this twice. A second viewing, I think, is necessary if you want to catch everything. Case in point, there's a moment where Carol is getting her mind read, and they're kind of doing a fast forward. Okay, go back. Oh, you went too far back. And they're playing scenes in her memory. And I think that if you have knowledge about where this is going, it makes so much more sense when you're watching it that second time. In fact, I think it is the scene that gains the most from a second viewing. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about as far as the story is concerned. I want to talk about a few characters, specifically ones that I didn't talk about in my spoiler review. First up on the list is Yon-Raag. Yon-Raag was played by Jude Law, and he's kind of like Veers' trainer, and he's trying to train her so that now she's able to destroy the Skrull scum, and he's really kidnapping her to try to get that energy signature because they know what it is, but he's not telling her the full story. And he actually ends up being the main villain for this movie. As far as villains go, not my favorite. Especially since they touted the Skrulls to be the villain in every single trailer, and I just had that sense. I was like, I don't think the Skrulls are really the bad guy, and I was right. But as far as villains go, he served his purpose. I just didn't like it. He lived, so he's a villain that they didn't kill for like the first time in forever. But that worked out. Then you've got Talos, who is kind of like the Skrull leader, and Ben Mendelsohn plays Talos. He steals the show in every scene that he's in, with his dialogue, with the way that he acts. There's a fight scene that he has with Nick Fury in the middle of the movie. I really dug that fight scene. I really liked it. It was one of those where the cuts weren't as strong, so you could kind of see the flow of the fight. You could also see that Nick didn't stand a chance against the Skrull, but that's just because the Skrull thought that this human here was working for the Kree. I understood, and he was trying to do this for his family. As he said, like later on in the movie, it's war, none of our hands are clean in it. And I really enjoyed, especially when we get to know his family. And we don't get to extensively learn like a lot of the traits of his family and things like that, but you understood what he was fighting for. And I think any of us that have family, which I mean, all of us technically have family, but especially if you have a child, you really empathize with what he's going through, with what he's doing. He's trying to do his best to find his wife and his kid, and I loved that part about the movie. Two more characters that I want to touch upon. Maria Rambeau, who was Carol Danvers' partner in crime, so to speak, when she was in the Air Force. Wonderfully done. Wonderfully done. Played by Lashana Lynch. I just the way that she acted, you could see the emotion in her eyes whenever she was delivering any lines. And then she had this really awesome flight sequence toward the end of the movie where I was just like, that was awesome. And it was great that you had not just Carol Danvers, not just Captain Marvel doing awesome things, but Maria Rambeau doing awesome things too. Just the fact that she's an awesome pilot was enough. It was great. And as I said, the acting was on point. So you really got to feel a little something with her. And this is one of those Marvel movies I didn't really feel that emotional for. But whenever it got to some of her scenes, I felt more emotion than I did in most of the movie. And the last character, I can't talk about this movie if I don't talk about Goose. Goose is the cat, who's really not a cat. So in the second trailer, you see Samuel L. Jackson, you see Nick Fury get all chummy with this cat. And it turns out this cat is a Flurgan, which is this demon spawn, tentacle mouth pit of hell taking the form of American tabby cat feline. And we, the audience, aren't let in immediately on what's going on. We are given hints. For one, when Talos meets Carol and Nick and Maria in Louisiana, he sees Goose and he's like, I wouldn't hold that thing so close if you knew what that was. That's a Flurgan. But we aren't really shown what Goose is until it takes the Tesseract. And then the cat is out of the bag. And Goose, if you watch it a second time, when you see that Marvel had Goose, when she would get friendly with somebody, that meant that Marvel could trust that person. And you saw that throughout the movie. Goose is chummy with Carol in that flashback. Then Goose is chummy with Nick Fury and when they were in Project Pegasus. They get to Louisiana and Goose starts to get warmed up to Talos. And then whenever they are on the Kree Imperial ship, whenever Talos changes into the Kree Guard, Goose is all like, oh, I know you. And so Goose actually does play a good role in it, even if at times Goose is more of a plot device. The one thing that I have to be honest about is the way that Nick Fury loses his eye by Goose scratching it is weak sauce. Is it played for laughs? Yeah, it is. It's kind of used as a joke. Unfortunately, I wasn't really all that fond of the joke. I mean, apparently he didn't hate it that much because he kept Goose as his little, he had him a little bed and everything, so he didn't hate it that much. But I thought Goose was enjoyable, even if Goose was used more as a plot device. Those were the major characters that I liked, and there are some other tertiary characters that had levels of enjoyment, like I said, the throwbacks with Ronan and Korath the Pursuer. You also had Agent Coulson, who's really not in this movie as much as I would have liked, but the fact that we get so much Samuel L. Jackson as young Nick Fury more than makes up for it. If you haven't watched this movie, and you were just wanting to get like the play-by-play by watching my video, it still is worth a viewing. Plus, it's kind of important if you want to know who Captain Marvel is before Endgame, because Endgame, yeah. So that's my spoiler review for Captain Marvel. Tell me what you guys think about it in the comment section down below. Also, let me know if I missed anything, because I was trying to get through this within a reasonably smaller amount of time. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, and if you're new here, subscribe to the channel. Share this with your friends on Facebook and Twitter, and as always, this is Cameron with CBM Reviews. We'll see you next time.